AST Space Mobile built the biggest satellite ever sent toward space. It is the size of a tennis court, but it cannot get to space. If you are looking for an undervalued space stock and AST is on your list, this is the part that matters. The one rocket big enough to carry AST satellites kept failing. It killed an AST satellite on April 19, 2026. Then it blew out its own launch pad on May 28, 2026. The other choice is SpaceX, but SpaceX runs Starlink, the very service AST is trying to beat. So AST just borrowed $1 billion to buy its own rocket. The problem is the rockets it can buy cannot fly yet. The point is not the dilution everyone is talking about. It is a company that cannot control its own way to space. Let's look at what AST actually built first, because it is hard. Its newest satellite carries an antenna of nearly 2,400 square feet. The last record for one of these was 693 square feet. AST more than tripled it. I have a master's in aerospace engineering, so I do not say this lightly. Building an array that large, folding it into a rocket, and opening it in orbit without carrying it is one of the hardest things you can attempt in space. And it buys something no one else has. It lets your normal phone, with no dish and no extra part, pull real internet straight from a satellite. So the hard part of this business was never the rocket, it was the antenna. AST solved that part first, which is exactly why the next fact stops me. The most advanced satellite in the sky cannot get off the ground. On paper, AST looks like the easy winner. Look at who is already lined up behind it. AST has deals with around 60 mobile carriers, names you know, like AT&T and Verizon in the US. Together, those carriers reach more than 3 billion phones around the world. In April 2026, the US regulator, the FCC, cleared AST to fly 248 satellites. A year ago, the limit was 25. And the company is not broke. At the end of March 2026, it held about $3.5 billion in cash. The man behind it is not a dreamer with a slide deck. Abel Avalon already built one satellite company and sold it for $550 million in 2016. Did he retire and relax on the beach? He could have stopped working, but no. Instead, he started over in 2017 on the one thing the industry said was impossible: an antenna big enough to reach a normal phone from space. He built it. But that same stubbornness now works against him. The antenna is so big that almost no rocket can carry it. The strength and the weakness are the same choice. Here is the promise made simple. One day you are hiking or driving through the desert, or a storm knocks out the towers near your home. Your phone shows no bars. And it still works, because it quietly connects to one of AST's satellites instead. For anyone who has ever been unreachable in an emergency, that is the dream being sold. AST can reach 3 billion phones. It still cannot reach orbit on its own. Which of those two numbers decides the stock price? The demand is real, the technology is real, but none of it counts until the satellites are actually up there. And that is where the story turns. So why can't AST just put them up? Because of the one thing it does not control: the rocket. This is where my degree actually comes in. I specialized in orbital mechanics. That is the math of getting a satellite into the right path around the Earth, at the right speed, at the right height. Get it wrong by a little, and the satellite cannot stay up. That is exactly what went wrong. On April 19, 2026, AST put a satellite called Bluebird 7 on a Blue Origin rocket called New Glenn. The rocket let go too low. The engine did not give enough push on its second burn. The satellite could not climb, it came back down and burned out. Then on May 28, 2026, a new gland blew up on the ground during a test and destroyed its own launch pad. So the big rocket AST was counting on is now both failing and grounded. You might ask, why not just use SpaceX? SpaceX is the most reliable rocket company in the world. And AST did use it. A SpaceX Falcon 9 carried 3 Blue Birds up in June 2026. But look at the problem with leaning on SpaceX. SpaceX owns Starlink. Starlink is the exact service AST is trying to beat. You do not want your survival to depend on a rocket owned by your direct rival. And SpaceX has thousands of its own satellites waiting in the line ahead of you. Think of it like a train and a truck. SpaceX is a train on a smooth finished railroad, cheap, on time, every trip. But it is your competitor's train and the seats are full. Everyone else is a truck on the dirt road that has not opened yet. And the one truck big enough to be efficient, Blue Origin, keeps crashing. And look at how strange the price tags are. Around July 8, 2026, the market valued Blue Origin, the maker of the failing rocket, at $130 billion. That is 6 times what AST is worth today. Are you following why this matters? Because this is the real thing you buy when you buy AST, not the antenna, the ride. The biggest satellite ever built is still sitting on the ground, waiting for a ride it does not own. If this breakdown is useful, hit like and subscribe. I go 3 layers deep every week. So this week, AST tried to fix the ride problem. And this is where it gets strange. On July 16, 2026, AST said it will borrow another $1 billion. The stock fell more than 10% the same day. Every headline said the same word: dilution. More shares, less value for the people already holding. But look closer. What is that $1 billion actually for? The filing points to buying or investing in a launch company. An analyst named Tim Farah put it plainly. AST looks ready to buy a rocket company, so it never has to beg for a ride again. It makes sense on the surface. On your rocket, on your future. That is exactly how SpaceX won. But here is the catch. Look at the rocket companies AST could actually afford. Firefly, Relativity, Stock Space, Rocket Lab's New Neutron. Every single one of them has the same problem. None of them is flying yet. They are all still being tested. So AST, a company that cannot get its own product to space, would be buying a rocket company that has never reached space either. 2 unfinished bets stacked on top of each other. And remember, this is the second billion. AST already borrowed about $1 billion back in February 2026. To stop depending on others, AST wants to buy a rocket that has never flown. It is swapping one thing it cannot control for another. Does that fix the problem, or do they just make it worse? So while AST spends $1 billion trying to buy a way up, hold on to one fact. Its biggest rival is already up there. AST wants to beat Starlink, but Starlink is already in space. Let me clear up one confusion first, because it changes the whole picture. There are 2 different Starlink products. One is the dish on your roof that does full fast internet over 100 megabits per second. That is not the one AST competes with. The other one goes straight to your phone with no dish. That is the real fight. A lot of people think that phone service only sends text. It does more than that now. Since October 2025, it does text, apps, maps, even some voice and video calls. But it is slow, around 2 to 4 megabits per second. So AST's real edge is this. Its giant antenna is built to give a phone real fast internet, not the slow version. On paper, that is better. But I have to refer to the other side. Starlink is not standing still. It is aiming for the same fast phone speed around 150 megabits by 2027. And it will launch those satellites on its own cheap rockets. So which company is actually ahead today? Look at it honestly. Both companies are aiming at the same finish line at about the same time. One of them is already in orbit, already earning and owns its own rockets. The other one is on the ground borrowing money to buy a ride. And there is a bigger question about whether the customer even cares which technology is better. If you are stuck with no signal and Starlink already lets you text and call for help today, will you wait years for AST to arrive with a faster version? Most people just want their phone to work. Starlink is already in orbit. AST is still raising money to get there. When they both reach the same speed in 2027, who will already have the customers? So the technology gap may be real, but real does not always win. Sometimes the one who shows up first does. Now come to the real question. What are you actually paying for? Look at the price against what the company earns. At $55 a share, AST is worth about $21 billion. Last year, in 2025, it made about $71 million in revenue. This year, it guides to between 150 and 200 million. But here is the part almost nobody says out loud. Almost none of that money comes from the phone service. That service is not switched on for customers yet. The revenue comes from government contracts and payments from carrier partners. The actual product earns close to nothing. So you cannot value this the normal way. Price against sales will be about 300 times. That number is meaningless. You are not buying a business today. You are buying a promise about the year 2028. Now let me be honest about myself because I think it matters here. I am not a careful investor. I bought risky stocks like Rocket Lab, CrowdStrike, Cloudflare, and Unity a few years ago when every one of them was losing money. I am comfortable with risk, but every one of those companies had customers paying for a real product. They just spend more than they earn. This is called pre-earnings. AST is different. AST has not yet proven that anyone will pay for its main product at all. That is pre-revenue. Those are two completely different kinds of risk. And even as risky as I am, this is the line that I will not cross. For anyone hunting this crash for a cheaper gem, that is the real question. Are you buying a discount or a promise that has not been tested? When I finished the research, I did not think about the price. I thought about how much of this company's future sits inside other people's rockets and how little of it AST actually controls. So here are the three things I'm watching. 1. Whether AST actually names a rocket company to buy and what it pays. A cheap, smart deal is one story. An expensive, rushed one is another. 2. The next New Glenn launch. If Blue Origin's big rocket flies clean again, AST's right problem eases. If it fails a third time, the problem gets worse. 3. The calendar. AST says real service starts in the first half of 2027. Watch whether that date holds or slips again. The biggest satellite ever built is still sitting on the ground, still earning almost nothing, waiting on rockets and rivals that AST does not control. So the next time you see this stock jump, ask what actually changed, the satellites or just the story around them. Earlier this week, I broke down another space company making this exact same move to buy its way up, except that one already earns real money. Click here to watch it now.